Well, I am going to analyze some essential Los Angeles Chargers free agents who are likely heading elsewhere and take a close look at how much money will be available to spend in the market. This needs a deeper discussion because these players keep coming up in conversations across social media and throughout NFL media circles. It's worth really breaking down these four specific players to understand what's happening and what it means going forward. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. As someone who studies the NFL closely, I've been consistently pushing back against this whole rebuild year talk. Been hearing it everywhere, but here's the thing. When you look at rebuilds across the league, we're talking about teams with no quarterback, no foundation, basically starting over from scratch, just like the Las Vegas Raiders, teams that are just bad across the board. But that's not what we're seeing with the Chargers at all. This roster has serious talent. We've all seen it on the field week after week. The real issue here has been coaching and leadership. Brandon Staley couldn't get it done, and if we look back, Anthony Lynn had his struggles too. Though interestingly enough, word around the league is he might get another shot at a head coaching job somewhere. Getting Jim Harbaugh was a game changer for this organization. When you look at what went wrong before, a lot of it falls on Tom Telesco. As GM, his moves just didn't pan out the way they needed to. Looking at GM rankings across the league, Telesco was near the bottom, around 28th or 29th out of 32 GMs. His one-year stint with the Raiders was a disaster, and he got let go fast. Now, most of our staff is sticking around, including Chad Alexander, working with Joe Ortiz, which is pretty surprising given how things went down. Here's where the rebuild talk actually makes some sense. When Joe Ortiz and Harbaugh walked in, they inherited a mess with that $30 million over the cap. They had to get creative, moving money around just to make the season work. Had to restructure deals for Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. The problem was they couldn't do the same with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and that really hurt the team this season. Ortiz did what he could with limited funds, but think about this. $50 million in dead cap space last year. That's just money down the drain. But here's the good news. Next year, we're only looking at about $3.3 million in dead cap. That's a huge difference. Right now, there's about $63 million available in hand, and with some moves, that could jump up to around $100 million. That's serious money to work with. So let's break down these potential moves and see if they make sense. But the thing to note here is that even with so much cap space, steps shouldn't be taken that result in releasing key players like what was done last year, just to increase cap space. Another drawback would be that compensatory picks won't be received either. That's important because typically teams get these picks when they lose key unrestricted free agents who sign with other teams. An important detail here, the player has to sign somewhere else naturally, not get released or waived. Now, there might be some rare cases where teams can petition the NFL for a compensatory pick, but these rules are pretty strict, even if they're not always crystal clear. For the players we're about to discuss, compensatory picks probably aren't happening, but the Chargers are projected to receive 3 compensatory picks in the 2025 draft. The Chargers are projected to receive extra 5th, 6th, and 7th round selections. Based on the comp pick formula, the departures of linebacker Kenneth Murray, tight end Gerald Everett, and cornerback Michael Davis yielding those picks respectively. Let's start with Joey Bosa, and yeah, this one hurts. He's the last San Diego Charger left, and what a player he's been. 4 Pro Bowls tell you everything about his talent, but these last 3 years? They've been rough. Just look at the numbers. Only 28 games played over 3 seasons with 14 sacks total. That's not what you expect from a guy on a $135 million contract from 2020. Speaking of that contract, it shows exactly why Telesco struggled as GM. He couldn't negotiate smart deals. For comparison, look at how Joe Ortiz handles contracts. He's not just throwing money around. Looking at Justin Herbert's future contract negotiations will be interesting, given how different Ortiz's approach is. This season really tells the story with Bosa. In 14 games, he put up just 5 sacks, 13 quarterback hits, and 2 fumbles. For a player making that kind of money, those numbers just don't add up. Over the cap shows we'd save around $35 million by moving on. That's huge money in the NFL, the kind that lets you bring in 4 or 5 impact players to strengthen the roster. Look, nobody likes seeing a player like Bosa go, but from an analysis standpoint, it's probably time. Could Ortiz and Bosa work something out in negotiations? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. There'd still be about $20 million in dead cap money to deal with, but that's already factored into the books. The savings make this move make sense. Important to note here, since we'd be releasing him in his final year, he wouldn't qualify for a compensatory pick. That's just how the NFL's comp pick system works. Now let's talk about Gus Edwards. This might ruffle some feathers, but here's the situation with Edwards. He had a tough season. Everyone watching NFL football could see it. That ankle injury from camp never really healed right. And it showed in his performance. Even after J.K. Dobbins went down, Edwards couldn't find his rhythm in the offense. For a back with his track record, averaging just 3.6 yards per carry and only 365 total yards rushing is way below standard. From a roster management perspective, letting Edwards walk saves $3.1 million in cap space. That might not sound like much in NFL money, but think about this. That's money you could redirect to J.K. Dobbins. Looking at what both backs brought to the table this year, Dobbins earned that money more than Edwards did. Dobbins has already made it clear he wants to stay with the Chargers. When you're building a roster, you want guys who are committed to the program. Plus, the run game could get reinforcements through free agency or the draft. Looking at Edwards' contract details, hold on, let me get these numbers straight. We're talking about a $4.1 million guaranteed salary. Edwards will get some money, but the cap savings matter here. Even though he signed a decent contract, he'll walk with about $4 million. Just like Bosa, he won't be eligible for a comp pick. Now, let's break down Trey Pipkins' situation. Here's a guy who's strictly a right tackle. Trying to make him a right guard just doesn't work. He doesn't have the athleticism for the pulling that position demands. Sure, he had some decent moments, but his late season performance dropped off significantly. The numbers tell the story. Letting him go saves $6.8 million in cap space. Some might argue for keeping him another year, but that money could bring in multiple quality players. Think about it. You could use those funds for guys like Poona Ford, $1.79 million, or Tier Tart, $1.125 million. Or maybe put it toward keeping J.K. Dobbins. When you look at Pipkins' performance, ranked 86th out of 135 qualifying offensive guards, with a 57.8 overall grade in 2024, the decision becomes pretty clear. Having strong tackles like Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater actually exposed our interior weakness. Teams just attacked the middle, knowing they couldn't get past our bookends. Plus, we've got to think about Slater's upcoming contract. He's due for a big payday, and he's earned it. He's absolutely a cornerstone player you build around. So when you look at Pipkins' $6.8 million, that money could go towards Slater's new deal. Mix in some of that Bosa money, and you can lock Slater up with a strong contract, whether that's long-term or a 2-year deal. In the NFL, sometimes it comes down to musical chairs with the salary cap, and Pipkins looks like the odd man out. Now, let's talk about Khalil Mack. He's confirmed he's coming back this year. That Bosa money, around $35 million, could help keep Mack around. Sure, you could debate whether Mack's worth that full amount. Looking at the numbers, maybe his true value is more in the $25 to $30 million range. But consider this. He ranked 10th in the league in pressures, sets a strong edge, and is a complete defensive end. Mack's age raises some questions, especially with his groin issues and other health concerns. But Mack brings so much to this team. His leadership in the locker room is invaluable. Give him one more year, let him have that final run. His experience and production make him worth bringing back. Looking at the overall picture here, you've got guys like Poona Ford, T-Tart, and J.K. Dobbins, who need to be priorities for bringing back. Khalil Mack fits in that group too. But those other three we discussed? The money saved by moving on could help strengthen multiple positions. Maybe grab T. Higgins, add another veteran running back, or shore up that center guard spot. Speaking of the offensive line, Zion Johnson probably gets another shot at left guard next season, but that's something to watch. With all this cap flexibility, we're talking serious money to work with, this offseason could reshape this roster significantly. That wraps up my analysis of the Los Angeles Chargers free agent situation and the potential cap space implication. Now it's time to hear from you. If you were in charge of the front office, what would be your priority moves this offseason? Would you let players like Joey Bosa or Gus Edwards go to free up cap space? Or would you try to restructure their deals to keep them on the roster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm excited to hear your take. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth analysis and updates on all things AFC West. Let's keep this conversation going, and I'll see you in the next one.